Erev Tov. Welcome back. They say there was once a group of kids who were coming back from some kind of some party that they had off campus. They all got into the Ubers, and in their drunken stupor, they were talking about their degrees and what classes they're taking, and they were bragging which university that they're at. And one of them says, yeah, I'm in MIT, it's known for their STEM research and their economics program. And he starts talking a little bit about the sciences, and the driver turns around and says, oh, which classes are you taking, and what is your field of interest? And the students pause and they look at the driver with this scornful look, like, who are you? What do you even know? And he turns around and he sticks out his hand and he says, my name is Jack Cohen. MIT class 1986. Nice to meet you guys. And I think that though this is a term that was borrowed from physics originally, I believe it was from Fritz Machlup, that he titled expiration dates, you find something similar with degrees, that they have a shelf life. And some degrees expire faster than others because the information in the field changes that quickly. Others less. You find the same thing, not just in the world of academia, that unless you stay relevant, you really stop mattering. It's the same thing when it comes to our Ḥachamim. There are certain Ḥachamim, you read their word, you read their works, and you say, wow, it's as if he was a prophet looking into today. And then, unfortunately, there are others who, though it may have some place in a museum, in day-to-day life, it has an expiration date. It expired. Today I want to talk to you about a Ḥacham who you probably never heard of. In fact, you might have not even heard of the city that he's from. So with your permission, I would like to take you on a little bit of a journey. Now, for those of you online, you have all these attachments that we're going to be opening up. So there's a map as well as two different books that we're going to look at from Ḥacham Baruch Sabag. Though it's spelled with an aleph in front, it's pronounced Sabag. His askara is tomorrow, so tonight, Gimel Adar, 1946. Now I want to take you a little bit on a journey back into Morocco, zoom into a little city, and find a very, very big thinker, and learn two really critical things about what does it mean to stay relevant, humble, but yet understand what your job in the world is. So let's dive together. If you can, I'm going to ask you to pull up the maps. Let's start with that. So you have a map that looks like this. Again, it's titled, what is it titled? The name of the city. Oh, very good. Okay, so the map is titled Safi, S-A-F-I. Now this is zoomed in. If you recall last time we did, so you'll see on the top, the most northern part of your page is Spain. We're moving down into Morocco. For those of you familiar, and there are many stereotypes. The Moroccans are not excused from them. But I think it's important to note that when we talk about Morocco, this is a country that housed hundreds upon thousands of Jewish people. Probably more than any other country did, at least from the Sephardic world. And unfortunately, that has changed, as we spoke about in 1948, with the expulsion of all the Jews from the Arab nations. But you have over here, we're talking about Talmidei Ḥachamim, courts, systems that were so incredible that if we only took the time to learn, there is so much that we can replicate from systems that worked. So we're always looking for solutions to problems, but we are never willing to entertain solutions from certain places where things worked. Morocco is one of those countries. I'm not going to tell you that there weren't problems. Of course there were. But as a model, as infrastructure, it was something incredible. Now I want to take you all the way to the coast. If you walk, come with me. Come with me all the way to the coast, the western coast of Morocco. You're going to see. Let's start we started with Spain. So you're going to go Tangier, go down. You see Rabat, Casablanca, probably a big city you've heard about. But you have to then go a little bit lower, right? A little bit lower, there's a city called Safi. Safi some called it Safi. There were some other names. Historians debate who decided what the name is. There are some very interesting tales for you to find out about. But if you notice Safi, and then you go a little bit southeast, you have one of the main centers of the Jewish community in Morocco, Marrakesh, which is very tightly connected to the community of Safi, as well as Casablanca. So you have that triangle. Many of the residents who lived in Safi, the Jewish community, was a pretty large percentage. We're talking about, they were about 20% of the population, which is significant because the population wasn't that big. Many of them were Megorashim. They're known as the Berber Jews. Forgive me for the slur for some people. But they were known to be merchants. They were very, if you remember that triangle that we had to New Guinea and the New World, Safi is a port city. It's a port city that's known for its pottery, for its textile, and the Jews were heavily involved in that. It helped that the city was under Portuguese rule for a very long time. And though it wasn't amazing for the Jewish community, it was a lot better than other places. This is where we zoom in. I'm going to put a little side note. If you're interested, you could go onto, there's a website called, if you type in Dafina, D''Fina, it's going to take you to a different website. It has a map of Morocco, and if you click on it, you'll actually see pictures of the school when the Alliance, much later on in the mid-1900s, or later, a little bit later even, they came and they set up schools. You could see pictures of the Jews from Safi, from the communities, from not necessarily Bate Knesset, but what did it look like, both the Jewish community there, as well as the schools and the school children. So I want to take you on a journey to a personality. Ḥacham Baruch, we don't actually have the day that he was born, but we do know when he died. We do know that he died Gimel Adar, which is tonight, in 1946. The truth is, I was going to do a different Ḥacham. This week was also the Askara of Ḥacham, Rabbi Yaakov Peretz. How did you know? Our teacher and our mentor, his father, Rabbi Yosef Peretz, had his Askara on Sunday. But when I thought of doing it, I then was blessed to find an old video, I think from 2023, that was then released in 2024, given by Ḥacham Yonatan Halevy. It's 11 minutes and maybe 15 seconds on the life of Ḥacham Yosef Peretz. And I felt that you did your it was good enough. I don't need to repeat it. So I want to walk you to Ḥacham Baruch Sabag. Now, if you open your second PDF that's titled Minchat Moshe, I don't yet want to look at the book, but I want to look at the picture so you know who this Ḥacham I'm talking about. So if you look at page 3, page 3, you should have a picture that looks like this. It says Tmunat HaMechaber. Minchat Moshe, the third page. You have a picture here of Harav HaMechaber Rabbi Baruch Sabag, Zecher Tzadik V'Kadosh Levracha. And you'll notice it says that he died on Yom Revi, on Wednesday, B'Shabbat Kodesh, Shilosha Yamim LaChodesh Adar. He died 3 days into the month of Adar, in Bishnat B'Hatzarot, which is 1946. Zechuto Yagen Alenu. Now, to give you a little context, so some of his contemporaries, he was actually born in the city of Marrakesh, to his parents, Shlomo. Over there, he is an outstanding student, and at a very young age, he ends up getting hasmacha. He ends up becoming a dayan, and he becomes the chief rabbi of the city of Safi later on. I don't know ages to tell you. That's a good question. I don't know. His contemporaries. So think of contemporaries. We have Rabbi Yosef Masas, Ḥacham Yosef Benaim, and Ḥacham David Sabach. These are names that you see also in his books, as well as the reverse. You will find them quoting him because these are contemporaries of his. He ends up making for himself a name in the city of Marrakesh. He does exceptionally well with the young crowd. So much so that the community of Safi goes out and recruits him. And he ends up moving to the city, to this port city. And we'll read soon about his conflicting feelings of what's it like to move from a city of Ḥachamim, a metropolis where Jewish life was thriving, to, again, think of, it's a port city. There are much less Jews, the infrastructure is much less, and he comes and the first thing he does is he sets up a yeshiva. So in 1884, he goes ahead and he sets up a yeshiva called Etz HaChaim. And he invites to this yeshiva Rabbi Shimon Baruch Ochayun to come learn with him. He brings him over, he says, come learn with me. He takes him into his house and he treats him like a father. He lives with him. This Ḥacham Shimon lives with Ḥacham Baruch for the rest of his life. You find that he publishes, and this is why I chose him. There are many Ḥachamim, but for me, the Ḥachamim that have books that you and I can learn from is very critical. He ends up publishing 3 books. I cannot tell you why he titles them this way. I've been still doing my research. But they're all 3 related to korbanot. So my first thought was that he was a Kohen, but I saw no evidence of that. The first one is called Minchat Moshe. He then has another book called Mincha Bilula. And he then has a book called Korban Mincha. What is unique about his books is the language. Let me walk you through his books. So if you can, go to the Minchat Moshe. You have it as a PDF. Let's look at the first page. If you notice on the bottom, which city was it printed in? Yeah, it was printed in Casablanca. Okay, so this was printed in Casablanca. His books later on get reprinted in Israel. The reason I gave you the full PDF is not because we're going to sit here and go through the whole thing, but because you need to keep these in a hard drive. Because when I tell you there are certain books that will disappear from our shelves, this is one of them. And there are other books that you can get a dime a dozen. This is not one of them. So I'm asking you that as you get books, I'm going to keep sending them your way. Even if you never get to read them, it's important that you build a library. Make a file, put a name. Minchat Moshe has a very sad story, but I want to first read. You're going to see the humility of a Chacham in the way he writes. He starts with Ma Ashiv Ladonai, Kol Tagmulo Hi Alai. What could I give back to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? I'm so thankful and grateful for everything he does. Odeh Adonai Ma'od B'fi, Ubetoch Rabbi Mahalelenu. In my mouth, I fill my mouth with praise for him. Al asher azrani v'zikani berov rachamav v'rov chasadav lechaber gam et hasefer hazeh hanikra Minchat Moshe. I'm so grateful and thankful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu that he gave me the zechut, the merit of writing this book, Minchat Moshe. כן יזכני אדוני לעבוד עבודתו ולעשות רצונו כרצון, אמן כן יהי רצון. He says, and I'm asking for a blessing for the future that I should continue doing the work of HaKadosh Baruch Hu. נאום הצעיר עבד השם ברוך סבג, השם ישמרהו ויחייהו, the son of Shlomo Sabag. Why is it so significant? Because if you turn a page, and then another page, and the one right after his picture, you're going to see a very beautiful picture. You see this image over here? This is a very young and beautiful gentleman. תמונתו בנו של הרב המחבר. This is a picture of his son, Rabbi Moshe, who unfortunately died at a very young age. And he was seemingly married. He did have daughters. He never had sons. And now you have to understand, his father, Ḥacham Baruch, is dedicating a book in his honor. And his opening statement is, thank you. Soon he's gonna share his pain in his heart. But before that, he starts with HaKadosh Baruch Hu, thank you for giving me the gift and the merit to bring these words of Torah to the world. When his son had a very untimely death, and again, very little information about why, what, he decided that he has to do something to commemorate him. And he named the book Minchat Moshe, meaning his sacrifice to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. It wasn't a korban, it wasn't solet, minchat solet, flour. It was Minchat Moshe. And he talks about it. If you go 1, 2, you'll see there's the Haskamat Rabbanim. So you see the rabbis who gave the approbation to his book. They write some very beautiful things, as is the style of these Ḥachamim. It's all poetry. I don't have. You have page numbers? I have page numbers. I'll count. We're on page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6, page 6. So you have here the haskama, the approbation from his rabbis and his colleagues, and they write very beautiful things about him and the work that he does. And if you read it, it's all rhyming. So it's a bunch of psukim, a bunch of rhymes. But if you go to page 7, you'll see more of who gave him haskamot. And I want to go to page 9, though, where it says on top, Hakdama, introduction. See, it says Hakdama on the top, introduction. And he starts off with a very heartbreaking paragraph. He says, Libi yachil bikirbi. In yours, it's page 8. Okay, in the PDF, it's page 8. For me, it's page 9. He says, Libi yachil bikirbi. V'derech otzev bi. Nishbar libi bikirbi. He said, my heart is shattered. In my body, I have a broken heart and a broken soul. Ki yad Elohai nagabi, because the hand of God struck me. V'mistarim tivke nafshi, in the privacy and the secrecy, I cry in my heart. Ki hashbetz ochazani, achaz ba'arpi be'orpi v'fashfesheni. He says, I cry in the darkness, because in the depths of my soul, there's something that's so broken, that was touched, that can never be fixed. He said, I cry, I sob. He said, I cry so much that my throat, instead of making beautiful music, I sound like a broken record. I sound like if you take a beautiful instrument and then you pluck out all the chords, so that's what I sound like. Al ki nilkach mimeni ba'avoni morashi levavi v'or eini. You know what was taken from him? He says, because of my own sins, my inheritance, my heart, the light of my eyes was ripped out. Moshe b'ni b'chatzi yamav. He says, my son Moshe, he was ripped out. At what age? Doesn't say. When? The 23rd, l'chodesh tevet, oy li al shivri, nachala makati. He says, woe is to me. Now you notice a lot of it is similar to Yirmiyahu and Echa, where he's borrowing a lot of the indescribable suffering of somebody losing a loved one.
But he died 2 months before this book.
Ken.
The book is printed in 1945.
I'm not sure that the book is printed in 1945 because he dies Ḥacham Baruch in 1946. So I'm not sure. I know it does say on the cover 1945. I'm not sure if that's the first printing. En lanu ela latzdik dino yitbarach tzadiku v'tzadik dino. He says, the pain is so great. I have no way that I could wrap my mind around it except for Baruch Dayan Haemet. Blessed is the judge of truthfulness, because Tzadik Adonai b'chol derachav, b'chasid b'chol maasev, ba'alav einenu tiluyot. HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I don't have complaints. So though I have a broken heart that is smashed to smithereens because the light of my eye, the inheritance of my heart, was stolen from me. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I only look up to you. Yasbi'a b'tzachtzachot nafshi, v'titana kadesh nishmati. Only you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, could heal the brokenness of my heart and soul. Uv'chen kamti v'etoded la'atpis ha'machberet hazot. He said, and that's how I was able to get up and print this book. L'menuchat nafsho ulilu nishmato. I'm printing it so for the rest and peace of his soul, and it should bring him merit. וקראתיהו בשם מנחת משה, להיות לו גם למזכרת, כי לא הניח זרע זכר, כי אם בנות. He said, I wrote this book, because what could a parent, lo aleinu v'lo alechem, do with the pain of losing something that is more precious than anything else in the world? He said, it's something indescribable, and only HaKadosh Baruch Hu could help me heal. So I got up, and with my eyes looking to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, I sat down to write something that will commemorate this Moshe into eternity. And that's why he names this book Minchat Moshe. And he goes on to write, V'ra he then ends up continuing to write. And what is interesting about this book, as well as his others, is that he doesn't write them in Hebrew. He writes his books in the Arabic that the Jewish community spoke. It is later on translated, much later on, into Hebrew. But his original text, Arabic. And I want to talk to you about why. Why does he do that? What is the purpose? For that, we have to go to his second book. Yes. So this is not Aramaic at all. Okay. This is a mix of, think almost closer to Ladino, but not really. Okay. Because it's a mix of, you'll see, if you look at, for example, it's very good. It's not even Arabic. If you look at page 2, for example, of your book, of the PDF, you're going to see Hebrew letters. Try to read it. You can't read. I can't read it. The reason being is because it's a mix between, again, the Arabic, Jewish, think almost like Yiddish. The letters might look the same, but it's not understandable Hebrew. It's the same thing over here. And to be fair, you're right. It's not even really Arabic. It's a Moroccan dialect of the spoken language. His next book he calls an interesting name called Mincha Belula. Again, he's referencing to the sacrifices. But it's interesting because he calls it Mincha Belula, which, what does Belula mean? It's a mixture. And if you look at the cover of your first PDF, so for those of you who have your phone, you can pull it up. It's like this. It says Mincha Belula. Let's read what he wrote. He writes, Bama akadem pnei Adonai Elohai, gavar chazdo alai, asher ad halom heviani. He said, what praise could I even say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu? Because the kindness and the goodness that he's done for me is so great. He's brought me to here, to this day. Uben birkei talmidei Ḥachamim heshivani. And the greatest gift that he's given me is I get to sit amongst scholars. Uma'at minachal adanav hishkani. And the fact that I sat around Talmidei Ḥachamim and even got to drink a little bit from their waters of wisdom. Vechiani. V'zikani b'chibur katan hakamut hayichut hazeh sefer mincha belula. He said, and because I drank from the waters of so many great scholars, I even was able to publish something small. Both small in quantity as well as quality. This book, Mincha Belula, Bilashon Chol. I'm writing this not in Lashon Kodesh. I'm writing it in our dialect of Arabic. Why? I'm writing this Lenare B'nei Israel, asher I believe it should say Adayin, Lo Ra'u Or Torah, Kedei Shiyu Lahem Mivor Likanes Bor HaTorah V'Hayira. I'm writing this book in the language that is spoken by the young people of the community. The reason? Because I want this to be accessible. I want my work to be relevant to the people who have not yet drunk from the deep wells of the Torah. They don't have access to it because of a language barrier. And therefore, I am purposely writing my book in a language that they will understand. He ends off, Achat sha'alti met Adonai ota avakesh. Shiviti Bet Adonai kol yimei chayai. One request I have, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, let me forever sit in the house of Torah, learn in the house of Torah. Le'ovdo be'emet u'v'tamim, b'levav shalem, amen. I ask you, HaKadosh Baruch Hu, all I want to do is serve you. I want to serve you. I want to serve the people of the Torah. Nu'um Hatzair Eved Hashem Baruch, again, Sabag, the son of Ḥacham Shlomo Sabag. So his introduction, again, is extremely humble. One, thanking HaKadosh Baruch Hu tremendously. Thank you for giving me the gift of being able to be here, to be able to produce this. So many people have so many hidden talents, and unfortunately, they never get actualized. The fact that somebody has talent and Hashem helps them use it is something incredible that the Chacham is recognizing. Thank you for giving me the zechut, the merit of being able to actualize what I have. And then you have the humility. He says it's something small. It's a little kuntrus. It's a little booklet, both in quality, both in quantity. But because I sat amongst such tremendous giants, I was able to drink from their well waters of Torah, and I'm hopeful that this will be something useful. Now, I want to take you first on a little detour to see a little more of his humility, but then jump back to something that I consider so important, which is the relevancy. What makes a Chacham be able to say, I want to change things radically from the way it's done, because I understand that I don't want to be that Uber driver, MIT 1986. So let's look, if you can. Go with me to page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. It's on page 8. So on the top of this, it says, Mashal, Shevi Mari Midubna.
It's the number 7 in the book.
And what is it?
Page 8 in the book.
Okay, so it's going to be number 7 in my pages, but page 8 in your PDF. Now, what's nice is you find this is already a world where the communities, Ashkenazi communities, Sephardic communities, there's already an awareness, we're talking about in the 1900s, and you'll find cross-referencing in the context of books. So, this is titled the Hitnatzlut, which is the apology, like an apology statement. But this is the second one. We're going to read the first one in a minute, but I want to look at the second one. He says, Mashal, Shevi Mari Midubna Zal. For those of you familiar, the Dubna Maggid was famous for all his mishalim, his parables. So he says, I'm apologizing, but I want to apologize with a story. He says, Mashal lerofe echad, shalach lerapot ben ashir, shayach chole. ויפקח עיניו החולה, וירא את הרופא שבפניו מוריקות. He says, there was once a very wealthy man who had a terribly sick son. They brought a physician. The physician starts healing the son. The son opens his eyes and he sees that this doctor is deathly ill. ויאמר לו החולה, אתה רופא אומן, למה לא תרפא עצמך תחילה? I don't understand. If you're such an expert doctor, which you are, why don't you heal yourself first? ויען, ויאמר לו, ידעתי בני ידעתי, כי אני חולה יותר ממך. ויודע אני לרפות את עצמי, אבל אין לי כסף לקנות בהם סמי הרפואה. He said, I know, my son, I know. I know that unfortunately I'm even sicker than you. I even know how to cure myself. But I don't have enough money to buy the proper medicine to make the cure. לכן באתי לרפות אותך, כדי שהשכר שייתן לי אביך העשיר, אקנה בו סמי הרפואה, וארפא את עצמי. He said, so I took this job, hoping that by the time your father finishes paying me, I'll be able to take that money, and then go get proper medication for myself so I too can heal. והנמשל, he says, that's the story. והנמשל, שאני יודע בעצמי שאני חולה, בחולי הנפש יותר מכל. Ḥacham Baruch says, I'm going to write a book now where I'm going to give you musar. I'm going to tell you why you're doing things wrong, how you should do things better. And I know that really, I suffer much more than you do. ויודע לרפות עצמי, אלא שאין לי זכות שידי יספיקו לי מן השמיים לעשות תשובה. לכן אמרתי לרפות בניו של הקדוש ברוך הוא, ובשכר זאת יסיינו ויספיק בידי לשוב וידיעו יתברך מי ייתן והיה לי שכרי. He says, please, before you even critique me, I know I have way worse things than everybody over here combined that I have to fix. I'm hopeful that if I help HaKadosh Baruch Hu's children, then maybe he'll also pay me back and let me fix myself. But don't for 1 second think that I'm coming as the expert, thinking that I'm fixed. He then goes on to quote, let's read it. He then goes on to quote Ḥacham Tzvi. If you remember, Ḥacham Tzvi spent his... No. Oh, mistaken. I don't know why I thought it was Ḥacham Tzvi, because later on he said Ashkenazi somewhere. But maybe I'm not correct. Okay, וזה לשונו, he says, הגאון. מורנו הרב צבי הרש ז"ל. He says, אמנם ידעתי בני, שיקרא שיקרא, בספרי זה איש אשר עליו רוח קינה. Now he's quoting. He says, don't think it's just me who has this problem. Somebody's going to read the book, they're going to be jealous. וכאשר ימצא בו דבר אשר עם ישראל יתוכח, הנה קורא לריב מהר, יאמר מה שמך לאיש מוכיח. הלא קטני אהבה ממתנך, וטול קורא. He says, I know. There are people who read the book, and out of jealousy, they're not reading the book to actually learn anything. They're reading it with a critical eyes to jump on you and say, gotcha. And I know for sure they're going to come upon something that I wrote that they're going to be able to say, Halo katna ava mimatnecha. Who says this, Elchanan? It's a phrase that we know. Is not my pinky thicker than your waist? Remind me where that pasuk comes from. I'm going to help you. After Shlomo HaMelech dies, the kingdom splits.
Oh,
very good. Rechavam comes and he says, I need advice. The people are coming and telling me, my father was too strict. He took too much taxes. He was too mean. If you'll be nice, fine, we're going to appoint you king. But if not, we're going to join Yarovam. So first he goes to the Kenim, to the elders, the wise people, and they give him such good advice. He says, come with goodness. The people want to fight. Fight back with kindness. If you'll disarm them, they will become faithful citizens for sure. Give in. Be soft on them so they will remain loyal. Rechavam doesn't like that advice. He goes to his stupid friends. I always tell my kids, stupid friends make you have stupid decisions. He goes to his friends and his friend says, are you crazy? You're taking over now the Malchut. You better show how tough you are. Go back to the people and you should be so vicious and so tough and so cruel so that any kind of dissent should be crushed. There should be no rebellion. So Rechavam does like the Atzat Yiladim. The Pasuk call them children. They're not children, but their mind is stupid. And Rechavam comes back and this is what he tells the crowd. He says, my pinky is thicker than my father's waist. If you think that my father was strict, wait until you see me. And ultimately, what happens? The kingship splits. It never rehabilitates. You have some people who this is what they do. They read a book, and immediately they jump out and say, "Oh, you think you have what to show here?" Or they do what they did to the shofetim. V'tul koreh yomer hakoreh omer elav achi. They'll say, "You're giving us musar on this. Have you seen what you have stuck on you?" We know that in the times of the shoftim. It says, Vayhi bimei shifot ha-shoftim. The times of the shoftim, Vayhi is lashon tsar, sadness. Why? Because unfortunately there was so much corruption. Our Ḥachamim tell us that when somebody would come to the shofet said, you have a toothpick, you have it stuck between your teeth. And the defendant would look at the judge and say, I have a toothpick stuck in my teeth? You have a beam coming out of your head. Meaning you're criticizing me on something so small. Have you seen yourself? He said, I know there are always going to be those people. He said, Lu yeh kidvarecha shetzadik ata mimeni. I believe you. For sure you're more righteous than me. Mikom makom al timne atzmecha milishma tochacha mimeni. I'm asking you. I'm already telling you from the onset, for sure you're greater than me. For sure you're better. For sure you're more holy. I know that. But still I'm asking you, listen to my words, not because I'm saying it. ואני אביא לך ראיות מן השכל ומן הכתוב ומן הקבלה שראוי לך שתתקבל תוכחה אף ממי שהוא פחות ממך. I'm asking you, accept what I'm saying, not because I'm better, not because I'm the rabbi, not because I wear a hat, but because I'm appealing to your sechel, I'm appealing to the Torah knowledge that you have, and the Kabbalah, the tradition that we have. So it doesn't matter that I'm the one giving it. I'm the mailman. Who cares who the mailman is? You have to understand, who cares? We're talking about a Ḥacham who, if I told you that the city was full of Ḥachamim in Marrakesh and he still became the head of the city, was one of Dayanim, and then was moved over to head the entire community of Safi, we're not talking about who's somebody that needs such humility. But he's not lying. What he's telling you is when I'm in the context of the greatness of the scholars that the Jewish people have, I feel small. Ḥacham Yonatan and I watched a small clip from Harav Mazuz last night where he mocks the academics and he says it's amazing. When you have real Ḥachamim who write books of substance, they're busy writing apology letters to you, telling you, I'm not so great, I'm not so wonderful. Please accept my words because they're the words of the Torah and the Emet, even though I may not be so great. And they have the flip side, the idiots of the world, who they publish one article, two articles, and everywhere they go, the people who everywhere they go, they make sure to tell you all their credentials. I'm Rabbi Dr. Ed, lawyer Ed. Who cares? Who cares? It's embarrassing when you go places and everywhere you go, you have to make sure that everybody knows all your credentials and titles. God forbid if they give you the wrong honor. I once had this in Israel. In Israel, God bless Israel. One of my nieces needed to go to Hadassah in Karem. It's a hospital in Israel, in the Jerusalem neighborhood. And she asked me if I can go along with her because she was there for the year. Her parents were in New York. I said, of course, no problem. So I come and we come into the unit. We're looking for the doctor. So I said, where's Dr. Berkowitz? And I come to the nurse's station. I said, is there a Dr. Berkowitz here? And one of the nurses gets up and she goes like this with her hands on her hips. She says, Dr. Berkowitz? You mean Professor Berkowitz? They have to understand. Doctor, professor. So I looked at her and I said, Slicha geveret. Oh, I'm so sorry, my dear lady. האם יש פה ראש ממשלת ישראל, נציג העולם, Professor Dr. Berkowitz? I said, I'm so sorry. I hope I didn't offend you. Do we have over here the leader of the world, the head of all the nations, the most honorable Dr. Professor Berkowitz? And then all the other nurses started to laugh. You know why? Because you sound like an idiot. You sound like an idiot when, unless people call you by the right titles, I don't answer to that. Over here, I have Ḥacham. He's writing a book that is tremendous substance, and he's not lying to you. So this is not false humility. He's simply telling you, in the context of the greatness and the scholarly works that have existed, I'm telling you that I feel mine inadequate. I'm asking you, though, not because of who I am, but because of what I write, listen to my words. That's my detour. Yeah, humility. But now I want to take you to relevancy. So we're going to go back. You're going to help me which page this is. If I'm on page 5, what are you on? It starts in the middle, hitnatzlut. So there's a nice little design. It's page, okay. 5 on the numbers, 6 on the pages. I recommend, on your own time, look at the pages 1 through 5 before, because the beautiful letters of approbation that were written are worth your time. It's not hard Hebrew. They're so beautiful. The words of Ḥachamim talk about humility. Ḥachamim who are unafraid to give compliments and goodness to another colleague of theirs because it doesn't take away from them. It doesn't take away. If I give you all the compliments in the world, it doesn't make you worse. When you're little, sometimes I see this with little kids. If I say, you say to one kid, wow, you're sitting so nicely. So then the 5-year-old across the table says, I'm not sitting nicely? I wasn't talking about you. I was just complimenting a 2-year-old. It's very childish behavior to have an inability to give somebody else a compliment because then somehow it makes you look worse. So that's for you to look at. But here, Ḥacham Baruch starts with his apology letter. And I want to read that apology letter to you because it's just so beautiful. Okay. So I'm going to tell you the first 3 paragraphs, and then I'm going to read on the next page. But the first few, he starts off with, let's start. He says, Modat zot, archot tzadikim yisharim, the betem veshi. He says, yes, I know that the general people who write books, they usually write some kind of apology statement to show their humility. זה אומר ככה וזה אומר ככה, ומרוב ענוונתנותם משפילה עם עצמם. He says, from so much humility, they make themselves too מושפל. אבל אני, איזה התנצלות יספיק לי, שאף אם ישפיל עצמי מאוד מאוד, אם כל זה אינני שווה לי. He says, I know, there are a lot of people who in the beginning of their book, they write these, pseudo-apologies because it... Thank you. He said, but whatever I'm going to write, for real, it doesn't represent enough really how humble I feel and how lowly I feel to be doing this. So anything that I'm going to write is still, it's not just it's true, but it doesn't even shine enough truth on how humble and unassuming I feel for this task. But he says, Aval, hasiba asher, why did I decide to write this? He says, כי ראיתי, כי יש אנשים שנפשם חשקה לדרוש אלוהים, כי לא אלמן ישראל, וקוצר קצרה ידם מהבין. He said, really, I know that I'm not the right person to write this. There are greater people, more scholarly, more holy people. Why did I then decide to even write this? He said, I wrote it because I saw a need in the Jewish community. I see that there are Jews who are thirsting to learn, but they have no access to the information. ומתוך כך אוסרים את המותר ומתירים את האסור, מדקדקים בפרוטות ומזלזלים בדינרים. He said, unfortunately, because they don't have access to the information, what ends up happening is they make tremendous mistakes. They prohibit the permissible, they permit the prohibited, they make details, huge deals, and things that are actually really important, they neglect completely. If this sounds familiar, welcome to Judaism of 2026. He said, so I have to write something that they can learn from. Otziba. He said, another reason, I want to share a personal story. V'hi ha'ikarit. You want to know? This is really why I wrote it. Ki biyoti bi'ir Marrakesh. He said, when I was in the city where he was born, right? Hayiti kova limud achad. Achar or achad? The letters are not. Achad. איזה רגעים אחדים בענייני מוסר וקצת דינים, והיו באים אנשים לשמוע, ובכלל הבאים, איזה בחורי חמד עם נערים, והיו תאבים לשמוע. He says, when I was in Marrakesh, after the tefillah, I would take some time to teach halakha, different musar, and there was a crowd that stayed. And within this crowd, there were a bunch of young people. וכאשר גזר עליי היוצר, לבוא אל עיר אספי, he said, and when HaKadosh Baruch Hu, he's the one who decreed that I come to the city of Asfi. What happened? What? Asfi is Safi. So, different place. Asfi and Safi is interchangeable. Don't ask me why. The Jewish community called it Asfi. The Arab community called it like Sabag and Asabag. Exactly. He says, לא אוכל לתאר כמה נתמרמרו האנשים וכמה נתעצבו. I can't tell you how heartbroken the community was that I was leaving. Again, notice the humility doesn't refrain him from telling you the truth. He knows that he gave something to the community that was so significant that when they heard he was leaving, they were heartbroken. ובפרט בחורים עם נערים, especially the young people. ועיניי ראו ולא זר דמעות נוזלים על חייהם. He said, and I saw not one, not two, they were crying. וכשראיתי את זאת, נצטערתי מאוד על אשר מנעתי תורה מפי עולים ויונקים. He said, I saw them, I saw the heartbreak, I saw the tears, and suddenly I had almost a change of heart, which is, why did I even take this job? How could I abandon my community for another position, and what am I leaving them with? Any true leader, when they come to a juncture, has this unfortunate tug of war. I want to serve everybody. I can't necessarily. But when is it really ever appropriate to abandon ship? I don't have a good answer. But
Marrakesh for something?
Yeah. He was born in Marrakesh.
So many rabbis, like, you don't have to worry about them.
Correct, but he's worried about them. Marrakesh is like saying leaving Yerushalayim and going to live now in Afula, a little coastal city. Come to San Diego. He's leaving them in good hands. But the fact that he had such a deep relationship with them, he knows he's not replaceable. So what happens? Look at the next page. לכן, אמרתי אל ליבי, I have to, right? אמרתי אל ליבי, במה יתרצה זו אל אדוניו? What could I do? What could I do to appease them? What could I give them back? He said, you know what? לחבר ספר קטן, בלשון ערבי, I'll put out a book, something small, in the בלשון ערבי, in the language of the natives, דינים הנצרכים, ומעט ענייני מוסר, כדי שאף מי שלא דשו רגליו בבית המדרש, יזכה ללמוד ולדע those people who don't have the ability to sit in the Bet Midrash and delve into the books and learn Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet, Hey, Tanakh, Mishnah, Talmud, Halakha, at least they'll have access to the Torah. He said, and really, if you want to know what inspired me to write this book, it's the tears. It's the tears of the people who, when I looked at their faces, I said, how could I leave? How could I leave them after teaching them after tefillah, musar, dinim, halakha, day in, day out? What am I leaving them to? He said, I want to give you a mashal. Let me give you a parable. It's probably why he liked the Dubna Magid. Here's the parallel, he says, the parable. ועשם משלי ואומר, עיר גדולה הייתה, there was once this very very big city, עיר גדולה הייתה לאלוהים, והיו בה עשירים גדולים, ובנו בתים ונטעו כרמים וגנות ופרדסים, והיה בהם כל עץ מאכל תאווה לעיניהם, ונחמד להשכיר. וברכות מים ופרחים ושושנים, וכל המתיר בתוכם ימצא תענוג ואדונים. He said, let me give you a parable to what this was like. There was once a city, a lot of wealthy people. These people built homes, gardens, forests, parks, playground, especially their agriculture. They built these beautiful orchards with flowers, with fruits, that they were just so pleasant to the eye. And anybody that would see them and experience it, it would just make their minds expand in a way. There was something incredible. But there was a problem. What did they do? אבל, היו שומרים אל הפתח, ואינם מניחים להיכנס שם, כי אם אנשים יקרים לבושי מכלוא. They put guards. Sorry, they were bouncers. You have a ticket? You're wearing a nice suit? You look like you belong? You can come in. אבל העניים והאומללים, הדלת סגר לכם. But what happened to that person? You look a little homeless. You don't look like you can afford this. Sorry, the gate is closed. You can't come in. ויקם אחד מן העניים, ויקנא לאלוהיו, למה האביונים האלה יעדר מהם התענוג? There was one poor person who says, not fair, I'm jealous. Why should they experience all the beauty, all the joy, and we have to stay on the outside of the gate? So what did he do? וילך ויקבוץ פרוטות. He went to collect a little bit, not a lot. ויקנה מרה אחת. He said, you know what I'm going to do? He collected enough money and he bought, what's a mara? Big mirror. וישים אותו נגד הגן, ובאים האומללים ומסתכלים במראה, ורואים מה שבתוך הגן. והם לא כולו מקצתו, והיו מוצאים קורת רוח. So what did they do? This one poor man says, it's not fair. All the rich people, they get to go into this country club. They get to enjoy. They get to experience the goodness, the beauty, the depth. I also want it. But I know I can never afford the entrance fee. So he went around, he collected a little bit of money. He bought a big mirror. He put it across the gate. And now all the poor people, the downtrodden, everybody that couldn't get in, at the very least, they could look in the mirror and they could peek in and see what's going on inside on the other side of the fence. At least they could get the pleasure of seeing. And that gave them a little bit. He says, Vahanimshal. Sorry. Must be your seat and the allergies. Forgive me. He says, Vahanimshal muvan me'elav. The explanation to this parable is self-explanatory. Sharabbeinu dorenu, Adonai, he says, let me explain to you. In our generation and previous, there are always going to be scholars. There are going to be people who Hashem has gifted not just with intellect, but time, the ability to sit and to delve and to learn and to engage their minds constantly in the depth of Torah. And they swim in these deep waters and they rejuvenate themselves and they live here. And that's great and that's wonderful. And this group of people, they enjoy themselves tremendously. The amount of menuchat hanefesh, the peace, the serenity, both their mind has and their soul is something incredible. But that's a very exclusive country club. Because how many people from the Jewish world really fit that description? There's then what we call Amcha, the nation. Me, you, the ones who thank God we have to work and we have kids and we have jobs. And by the time I want to come to shiur at 8:30 at night, my brain is fried because I'm not even looking at the people who are 3 hours ahead of us. I'm tired. I worked. I don't have to. That's the vast majority of the people. The vast majority of us don't have the luxury 24/7 to immerse ourselves in the Torah, into the books, to sit, to be able to blank our minds from anything else. So what about us? They have to say he's already dealing with a generation of Jewish people who they don't even speak our language. He says, so you have young people, particularly, who are coming and saying, why should we be the paupers who have to stay outside the gate? Why can't we also come in? Why is there a lock on the world of academia where only the scholars and only the Ivy League people and only the academics, they get to know the secret of the world? But all of us who are on the outside, we can't even crack the code open. He said, and that is why I wrote this book. I wrote this book particularly in the language, not of our forefathers, not in our Hebrew, but in the dialect of Arabic / Hebrew / Ladino, fill in the blank, that the locals here speak. Because I'm the one who's going to put up that mirror. I'm going to put up a mirror, and sure, I'm not going to tell you that my book will ever replace 20, 30, 40 years of in-depth learning. I can't. I can't possibly replace somebody who sits from 9 to 9 and immerses themselves in the book into something this short. But what I could do is I can offer a mirror. I can give you something substantial enough in the language that you speak, so that instead of this gated community keeping all their secrets to themselves, it gets exposed to the rest of us. So that the Torah doesn't become archaic and stay in a museum with a few people who know how to tap into it. It now becomes accessible to the masses. So that's the goal. I want every single person, the young children, the women, the people who never had an education, I want you to be able to pick up my book, and by the time you finish reading my text, you will know halacha, you will know musal, you will know some kind of thought. There was a little Kabbalah that he leaned towards. He said, I want you also to be in on the secrets. That's a Chacham. You see, it would have been much easier for him to write a book in Hebrew, where all his colleagues said, psh. You know, we had a bunch of young kids recently in our community for bar mitzvot, and they keep doing psh, psh, psh. You heard that sound? Very derogatory sound, in my opinion. If it was up to me, I would make them stop. Why? What does that sound really do? It's to make fun of you. It's a mockery. Yeah, like, wow, wow, wow. But he could have easily done that. He could have stayed in his comfort zone with his academics, with the Torah scholars, and said, forget about the peasants. If you want to learn, go work hard. How do you think I got here? Climb the mountain yourself. But somebody who has wisdom and says, yeah, but I don't want to be irrelevant. And really, it's not about me. I don't want the Torah to be irrelevant. And because of that, I will make whatever changes are necessary so that the words of the Torah get out to the masses, so the people can access it. So that people, even my book, maybe it's not going to earn the prestige with all the other Hebrew books on the shelf. Maybe it's going to be the weird colored one that looks a little more contemporary and a little more funky. And probably 2, 3, 4 generations later, when the communities move, nobody may even be able to read my book because that language may fall by the dust. But today, this is what the community needs. Today, in order for the Torah to be relevant, I need to make it accessible. And I want to take you, I have 3 more Ḥachamim, who, if I can parallel, you're looking at me with a question.
See, at the beginning of the share, that's that kind of deal that you made with the
Yeah, I wanted to save that. Yeah. No, but we could see it. You want to see? Yeah? Over here. Huh? Yeah, the answer is I did. But it fits into a different part if it's stuck out. But if you want to mention it? No, okay. No, say, it's good. Okay, Rabbi brought it up, so I'm going to show you because it's important. Sure, take 30 seconds, sure, because I'm not going to go back there.
In his book, he writes in a certain place, Morocco, that they had a school or some organization that set up to pay for kids to learn Torah and learn Torah. So he wrote this book, and he gave them all the copies of the book. He gave them the rights to print the book on the following condition: they should sell the book. 70% of the money they should give to their school, to pay for the school. 10% of it they should give to tzedakah. By giving it to a certain wealthy man who gives tzedakah, it should go private tzedakah to people who need food, who need money, who need sick. The last 20% should go back to him, so he can print more
He can
books,
print more.
do more tzedakah with it. So you see, he didn't have money to give tzedakah. So he gave the rights to his book. He said, I give them the right to print my book as many times as they want. They should make as much money as they want to keep supporting their school. They do tzedakah like that also.
You should know, by the way,
The whole book for tzedakah purposes.
if you look, and I'm going to encourage you to look through his books, if you look into his, I believe it's in the Korban Mincha, he has a fascinating piece on Aniei Ircha Kodmi, where he pushes tremendously that, contrary to how we always interpreted that, people always use the excuse, oh, I'm not going to give the stranger any money because I have to save it for my people, and they never give it to their people. His whole push is, yeah, of course you have to take care of your own community, but imagine the person who's coming from far away, who knows nobody here, who has no resources. You think the Torah would say push him away because my family first? Of course not. Quite to the contrary. Yes, take care of yours, but 100%, and you see this, by the way, throughout his works, which is the vision to be able to say, I need to think about the other. I need to think much grander than just what I'm seeing in front of me. Like Ḥachamim tell us, Ḥacham einav b'rosho. A wise person, his eyes are in his head. I don't know about you. It would help. But imagine, I never saw stupid people with eyes in their toes. Obviously, that's not what our Ḥachamim are telling us. When it says Ḥacham einav b'rosho, it means he has vision for the future. And you see this throughout his work, particularly when it comes to chesed, tzedakah. It's something incredible. I want to parallel him with three. Thank you for pointing that out. Three more Ḥachamim who followed a similar path. And if I get to read you the third one, I had tears in my eyes when I read it. But let me see that I could get to it. Bezat Hashem. The first one is the Pele Yoetz. For those of you who are sitting here, you know who the Pele Yoetz. So tell me, who am I talking about? We learn him every Shabbat. I wish that this is one of the classes that were recorded. One day, Bezat Hashem, when we put enough pressure on Ḥacham Yonatan, he's going to give a shiur on that. They're the best classes that are given. It's true. The Pele Yoetz was written by Rabbi Eliezer Papo. Very good. Bezat Hashem, when it's his askara, we're going to talk about him. But in his Ot Lamed, he goes through the Aleph Bet, and he gives advice that is just, every word is a gem. Under Lamed, he has La'az. Yep. I want to read to you just a snippet where he says, Hen rabim ata am haaretz, she'en mevinim b'lashon hakodesh. He said, today there are many people who do not speak our language, lo aleinu. Ukvar rabus sivrei haloazim la'am loez. ועוד כל ימי הארץ הרוצה לזכות את ישראל, ימלא ידו לכתוב סדרי תפילות וקיצורי דינים ותוכחות מוסר השכל בלעז. He said, if you want to do something for Am Yisrael, I'm asking you, start publishing books, sidurim, in the language of origin of your country, because the Jewish people don't all speak Hebrew anymore. וזה יותר טוב מלהוציא ספרי פלפולים או דרושים, אחר שהן מונחים בקרן זווית. He said, I could tell you, I know you think, no, b'chas v'shalom, what about the prestige? What about the Torah? I'm telling you that all the honor and the kavod will come from understanding your circle of influence, your expiration date. Your expiration date, where it's very nice that you want to show how good you are at writing Lashon HaKodesh. It's very nice that you want to show what a wonderful pilpulist you are. But it's not relevant to the community. The community cannot crack your book open because they can't even speak the language. He said, so what's going to happen? Your book, it's going to sit Bekeren Zavit. Ve'en mo'ilim ela le'echad meir o pam biovel. It's going to sit in the corner and collect dust. That's going to happen to your beautiful book that you wrote in Hebrew. Maybe once. He says once in Yovel. You know what once in Yovel is? Once in 50 years. Maybe somebody will take out the book. אבל ספרי הלועזים, יד רבים אנשים ונשים ממששת בו, בהם. ויש אנשים ונשים שנפשם חשקה לדרוש אלוהים. He said, I promise, if you write a book in the language that is spoken by your community, everybody will read it. The young people, the old people, the women, the children, everybody. And what's going to happen? The people in your community, their soul is so thirsty for Torah. Yad Rabim, here. V'la'asok b'talmud ha'mevi lidei masa. They're dying to know. Tell me what to do. I want to read the book so I can know. Ela shekatzor katzra yadam me'avin. It's not from no desire, but lack of ability that they cannot do. So we're not talking about people who are disinterested, people that say, I don't want to learn Torah, I don't want to keep mitzvot. We're talking about a community who is dying from thirst of teach me the word of Torah, but I have no ability to understand it. And if you could only take the book and make it accessible to me, I will drink it whole. ובשן הכותבים והמדפיסים ספרים הרבה, ללועזים חדשים, אם ישנים, הם מזכים את הרבים. וזכות הרבים תלוי בהם. He said, you want to know who gets the merit of the whole community? The leaders who put aside their own pride and their own tradition. This is how things have to be done, because this is how they've done. And they recognize the needs of a community. And they say, Hever, the community's needs today have changed. If in my other shiurim I was critical of Hasidim, I'm going to throw out a compliment. Unfortunately, the Lithuanian world very much models after the world of academia. The dry, sterile, homogenous community that is completely out of touch with what's going on in the streets. Came the Baal Shem Tov HaKadosh and said, you guys are out of your mind. It's wonderful that you're preserving the authenticity of what you think Torah is. You're losing the people. So you're going to end up like every other museum. Stained glass walls, little curated boxes with no attendance of people. Now, unfortunately, when the breakaway becomes the institution, that's a problem, right? But that was the attraction of, I want to speak the language of the people. I want to dance with them. I want to sing with them. I want to do cartwheels with you. Forget about going up there. I need to meet the masses where they're at. Obviously, the goal is to bring everyone back home. Then Emet, and he continues on the encouragement of please be relevant. In fact, in his introduction, he says the same thing about his work. He says, I'm writing things that are highly relevant to my generation. I'm asking you as the teacher, please edit my book. You never see an author say that, unless the author has the humility to say, I'm not always right. And what worked for my generation might be deadly for yours. So Ḥacham Eliezer says, please, if you're reading and teaching my book and you come to something that doesn't make sense, just skip it. Edit it out. It doesn't have to make sense, because if it's not relevant and if it has expired and spoiled like milk does, I'm asking you to take it out. The Torah is eternal, but my words that need to represent the Torah, if they haven't aged well, so just let it go. It sounds so radical, but this is a chacham with vision. Another two. The Ben Ish Chai. You know, it's amazing. It's amazing all the stereotypes that everyone makes up about everybody. Who is progressive and who's archaic and who's considered. It's fascinating. But another conversation for another time. The Ben Ish Chai. What was the Ben Ish Chai's name and where is he from, Elchanan?
Ben Ish Chai was
Rabbi Yosef. Take a guess. Rabbi Yosef Chaim. Yafe. Rabbi Yosef Chaim of Baghdad. Remember this famous picture that has gone through many different phases of editing? With the latest one, they make him peyot on the side. And I don't know if you've seen that version as well. But this is the Ben Ish Chai who, it's not fair. It's not fair. I'm going to critique a little bit. In a world that is trying to recreate something that never existed, namely the pseudo-Maimonidean world, everybody they throw into the trash. Lo aleinu, I can't even say this. You don't have to agree with everything the Ben Ish Chai says. But if you don't have his books displayed somewhere on your shelves, I don't know. V'amevin yavin. That's my musar for today. He writes a book. He writes a book, Sefer Chukei Nashim, The Laws for Women. And again, I want to read to you from his introduction. It has since been reprinted very beautifully. I don't know where ours is, but it's going to show up. I think it's at home. It's a pink book. It says Chukei Nashim with a picture of him. Again, if you open the introduction, I can't read this. You know why? Because though those letters are Hebrew, they're not Hebrew. They're Arabic Hebrew. It's printed in Livorno. Well, first it says Nitpas in parentheses Baghdad, and then afterwards in Livorno. But he has an introduction. And in his introduction, he explains to us why did he choose not to write it in Hebrew. He's written other books, books of halakha, books of Kabbalah. Those books are in Hebrew. Why did he write this book in Arabic? Now, he doesn't call it Arabic.
It was illegal to print this book in Iraq.
That's why he sent it to Livorno.
It didn't really get people to Livorno, they lied. It was printed in the beginning of Rabbi Ezra Talmud.
Yafe. Is that why it says in brackets Baghdad, but on the bottom they wrote Livorno?
They didn't want to lie.
Wow. Wow.
Because in Arabic, I'm reading about right law that's not Sharia law.
Oh, here it says on the bottom. Yafe. Have you heard? Yeah.
Right, so
Okay. No, I appreciate it. He says, Chibartiv be'ezrat Hashem, b'safa aravit regila. I'm writing this book in regular Arabic. Asher meduberet be'ir Baghdad. He said that's spoken here in the city of Baghdad. Umuvenet b'kol ha'arim lenashot. He says, Arabistan v'Hindustan. I'll translate. He says, I'm writing this in the dialect of the Arabic that's spoken here in Baghdad. And this Arabic is understood from, if you take Iraq, from both the east, which is India, and you know the Indian and Iraqi community had very strong connections. He said all the way out to the Persian and Iranian side and a little bit further. Everybody, specifically the women, everybody understands this Arabic. Hayot v'anosach, and he says, okay, ve'elu ha'devarim, midabrim divrei musar v'nimusin. I'm writing a book that teaches ethics. It teaches the etiquette of Am Yisrael. V'tivei ha'nevonim v'dachei ha'chachamim v'alichot ha'yisharim. This is a book that's for women, but it teaches them the essentials of what it means to be a Jewish woman. V'od meforash b'tocho me'inyanei hadinim v'halachot. And there's also halachot in here. Practical. Asher nechutzot lebanot v'lanashim v'chen tefilot u'bakashot asher mevakshim ha'nivraim me'et Adonai ha'rachaman. He said, I'm printing this in a language because this is a book that's made for the women. This is made for the girls. These are halachot that they need to know, tefillot that they need to say. They also need access to this information. And if I don't write it in a language that they will speak and understand, how in the world will they learn it? And he writes, Hatzair Yosef Chaim, he signs off the son of Ḥacham Eliyahu ben Moshe Chaim. And then in the next page, he writes, we do have it in English. Yafe. I think Feldheim published it in English, if I'm not mistaken, right? Yeah. Amru Ḥachamim, he says, Divrei HaMusar v'Atochacha yachziku ha'beriyot. That the words of ethics, of Musar, everybody needs it. ברוחניות ובגשמיות ויעשו להם קיום כמלך לגבינה ולבשר. If you take a human being and you don't teach them how to be a proper human being, they become feral. When you teach them musar, he said it's like the salt that preserves both the meat and the cheeses. ואם לא יתמיד ויחזור על הדברים כמה פעמים ויוחזם בחוזק וישמרם בליבו, לא ירוויח מהם דבר. He says, but if it's something that you don't learn once and twice and you internalize until it's in your bones, you're not going to benefit from it at all. ועוד, מי שאינו מתבונן על דרכיו, במלאכתו ובמעשיו ובדברים אשר ימסם תחת רגליו, לא ירגיש בהם. He says, if it's not something you're cognizant of and you think about and you intentionally do, ייכשל במכשולים אשר עוונותיהם רבים. It's inevitable that you will make mistakes. Right? In New York, they always say ignorance of the law is not an excuse. If you're not going to learn properly, there's no way that you're going to live without error. Uvdan va'hefsed ba'olam hazeh u'ba'olam haba. He said, don't think. It's not just that in the next world you're going to lose that, but also in this world you're not going to know how to live as a proper Jew. And he says, that's why I made sure to write this. He says, ועל זאת חיברתי זה הספר. Okay. וכן אמר התנא, אין בו ירא חטא. מפני שאינו עצומה. יבלה התולעות, ויצא הרע בידו, ולא ידע היכן התם והיכן... Ḥachamim, Pirkei Avot says that the idiot, the fool, cannot be a ירא חטא. Can't be a righteous person. Why? Because you have no idea what to be righteous of. You're going to be eating things that you shouldn't, saying things that you shouldn't do. because of ignorance, not because you're a bad person, but because you just don't know. He said, בחלק ממצוות ההלכה המוטלים עליהם בכל שעה. He said, therefore, I'm writing this book. ולכן, צריכות הנשים להיות אצלם ידיעות. It can't be that the women who are obligated in these mitzvot, but they have no access to them. They're going to get punished. There are consequences, but nobody ever gave them the opportunity to learn them. How could that be fair? He says it's not a fair thing. You're obligating somebody, but you're giving them no ability to know what they're supposed to do. He says, therefore, כדי שידעו הדרך אשר ילכו בה, ויתבוננו במעשה המוטל עליהם לעשותו. I'm writing this book in their vernacular so that they, with clarity and peace of mind, could say, I know what to do. I know what I'm supposed to do. I know what my job in this world is. I know how to execute it. I know what's right. I know what's wrong. Because somebody cared enough to make things relevant to me. ועל זאת חיברתי זה הספר, המפורשים בו מדברי המוסר והתוכחה והמצוות ויתר הדברים השייכים לנשים וקראתיו. He said, that's why I wrote this. Don't think. It's not because it brings me glory and fame. It doesn't come from any progressive values or any kind of a feminist agenda. He says it's very simple. Human beings need to have access. And if there's a whole contingency of people who have no access because of their language barrier, mind you, that's not their fault. We're talking about generations that women, unfortunately, were not given opportunities to read and to write, and certainly not in Hebrew. Certainly not in Hebrew. He says, so how could I rob them from their morasha? It's their inheritance. And again, you're looking at Ḥachamim who had the vision to say, if the Torah is going to be lanetzach forever, then we have to make sure it's relevant. And I want to end with one more Ḥacham. We're moving to a different part of the geography. We're moving to Germany. With a Ḥacham by the name of Ḥacham Rabbi Shamshon Raphael Hirsch. Does he sound familiar? Rabbi Shamshon Raphael Hirsch. Bezrat Hashem, when it's his Askara, we're going to talk about him. But if you don't know who he is, at the very least, Google his name. In his book, The Chorev, now you have to think, the book Chorev should ring a bell. Chorev he really wrote two books, Chorev and Moriah, two mountains he chose that are very significant to the Jewish community. His books were written in which language? German. They were written in German. Later on translated into English and other languages. It says translated by Dr. Dr. Grunfeld. His daughter, Judith Grunfeld, lived in Borough Park, and I had the merit of she would come to my school every single year, and she would talk to us. Very special, very old. I'm talking about I was maybe in 6th grade, and she was, I think, 100. I don't know. That's what it felt like. But in this book, I want to read to you two different pieces, with your permission. So he said, it's so beautiful. If I could read the whole book to you. So you have to understand, the Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch is living through and then after the time of the Reform movement, which really took its stronghold in Germany. And what he was dealing with, I promise you, his paycheck, I'm sure he didn't get paid, but he did nothing would have paid him enough for the headaches that the community gave him. So first, he decided originally he wanted his book written in two. It was going to be Moriah, like Hara Moriah, and Chorev. Eventually that changed. For those of you familiar, he also published later on the 19 Letters book. But he writes, when people critiqued him for what he was doing, his work, his language, the way he was presenting it, he said, I see, and this is an excerpt from the 19 Letters. He says, I see a child enveloped in flames. The bystanders are timidly inactive or seek only to save the building. So there's a child burning and everybody is paralyzed or they're so focused on, but the building's burning. I see the child. I rush in. Must I ask my neighbor first whether he too sees the child? Have I the right to consider whether in my haste I may not injure some bystander? May I even ask whether in my hurry to save the child, am I not hindering the task of saving the building or producing a drought which may impel the fire to fresh activity? Do I have to take all these nonsensical things into consideration when I see a child burning? But suppose you see the child too late, and before you reach it, the building falls with a hiss and a crash upon its poor head. Even if it were to bury me too in its ruins, I should only have done my duty. He says, you're so busy critiquing my methods and how I do it and what I'm doing. And all I see is, Am Yisrael, the child is burning up. And what you're busy worrying about is our approach proper? Is it going to make the institution look bad? Maybe we shouldn't save the child because they might... All these stupid calculations you're assuming I should make, there's a child burning. Am Yisrael is going up in flames. And I don't care if I burn in that fire too. I'm going in to save the nation. Later on, from his letter, he writes a letter to his friend, Ḥacham Hirsch. And he tells him about his plan to publish the book Chorev. I want to read to you a little, can I? He says to his friend, he says, as regards to the purpose of the present work, you seem to have grasped it well from the onset. I must admit that I have tried to walk in paths which have not been trodden for 3 or 4 centuries. I am prepared for the rebuke, bitter rebuke and even abuse. I don't care if I met with horrible abuse from the community. I am not expecting approval or fame, although I never attack real or imaginary persons. In fact, I do not attack at all. Only compile, develop, point away and seek truth. Where I think I found it, I try to bring it home to my readers. He says, I know that what I'm going to do is going to be so vilely attacked. I don't even care. I don't do that to other people, but I don't care. Generally, I only try to think out loud and ahead, and I should feel rewarded if people do not disdain to follow my thoughts. But there are people who almost consider it an impertinence that in 1835 one is still exhorted to think about certain matters. Such people will reproach me bitterly because they are being disturbed in their calm. However, these people do not belong to the trend of thought of our century. They are out of date and relics of the last decades of the previous century. We don't do things that way. It's not accepted. It's not our Messiah. It's not our tradition. Why would you bring this up? In the last 50 years, it has been clearly noticeable that trends of thought only enter Jewish circles. Listen to this beautiful sentence. He said, in the last 50 years, it has been clearly noticeable that trends of thought only enter Jewish circles when they have already become obsolete elsewhere. Meaning the Jewish community is 20 years behind always. The world was dealing with these problems 50 years ago. Sorry. For us, it's still not kosher enough to talk about. We only deal with things when it's a crisis because we never want to think ahead. Because anything new, anything modern, anything innovative, anything that might update us to make us relevant, chas v'shalom. That sounds like the reform. Our century wants to think, and that is its greatest merit. Whatever can be rationally explained and is capable of being presented as idea and concept, and can stand the test of rational thinking, has nothing to fear. We have the Torah Emet. What are you so afraid of putting it under the magnifying glass? But one can only analyze, test, and mediate upon things with which one is acquainted. Among Jews, however, this is a sentiment I believe that Ḥacham Baruch has. He says, among Jews, however, nothing is less well known than Judaism itself. He said, I understand why the Jewish community is so terrified of self-examination, because unfortunately, the Jewish community knows nothing about itself. I dare to submit Judaism, as it appears to me, to intellectual analysis. I shall perhaps be blamed for it from all sides. But just because of that, I must not and will not be silent. If I knew of even one person more capable than myself of pleading the true cause of Israel, my incapable and inexperienced pen would have rested for a long time yet. Again, echoing a similar sentiment of Ḥacham Baruch. He says, I know that if there was anybody more capable to do this job, I promise you I wouldn't have signed up. But because there isn't, I'm stepping up to the plate. Again, this is a sentiment you'll see throughout our Ḥachamim, which is the humility to say, I may not be the best person for the job, but I'm the only one, and therefore I'm not afraid to do it. As it is, however, I see an older generation in which Judaism has become an inherited mummy. A generation which shows veneration for Judaism, it is true, but a veneration without spirit. Some of that generation, therefore, see only tombstone inscriptions in Judaism, and thus despair of the eternal validity of the only thing that makes life worth living. On the other hand, he said, on one hand, I have the old generation who's mummified the Torah. On the other hand, I see a younger generation aglow with noble enthusiasm for Judaism, or rather, for Jews. These young men do not know authentic Judaism, and what they believe they know of it, they consider as empty forms without meaning. One must admit, however, that their ignorance is not entirely their fault, and thus the young generation is in danger of undermining Judaism while striving for Jews. So here you have a group that is either mummifying our tradition or loving the Jewish people but has no tradition attached to it and doesn't believe that the tradition has anything in it for them. I see no one in our day capable of disclosing to the young generation the meaning behind what they wrongly consider as empty forms, of reviving the mummy, and of taking our young generation to a vantage point from which they can behold the shining light of Judaism. And in such conditions, should we condone a dreamy, inactive silence? So I and you are looking at the Jewish world burning down, and our child, Am Yisrael, is stuck inside. Should we just be silent? It is our duty to speak out. If one is able only to hint at a route which others might valiantly follow, I must speak, simply because no one else does. This is the only justification for my coming forward. God will help me. Can I read a little more to you? One more paragraph. He writes, I do not ask for the prize of battle. I shall be happy to be merely the herald who utters the battle cry. But I am not afraid of the battle, even if I have to fight it on my own. You regret, this is beautiful, listen. He says, you regret that I have no reputation, he tells his friend, that my name is unknown. Nevertheless, I shall publish the book under my name, but only because in the view of many people, a cause for which one does not even stake one's name cannot have much value. He says, you're worried that nobody knows me. But I'm telling you that if you write a book and you can't even put your name on it, of what value should it have to anybody? He said, I am glad, however, that I am without fame and reputation. For it is not a matter of arguing with the backing of shiny authority, but simply a matter of presenting the truth, which will fight for itself. If anything I say finds praise and recognition, let the cause gain by itself. If anything arouses indignation, I am prepared to accept the blame myself. In this way, there is less danger of harming the cause which I would like to serve. It was indeed this fear which made me hesitate until now. And then he continues on. And when I read these ideas and thoughts, I said, it doesn't matter if the Ḥachamim started in Safi, and it doesn't matter if they ended in Germany. But the commonality is a radical attachment to the eternity of the Jewish people by making sure that the Torah forever stays relevant. And it was the leader's job and authority to make those changes with the holiness and veneration of what was, but the innovation and modernity that is needed to propel it into the future. And I'm asking us to look for Ḥachamim who can do the same today. And if you cannot find the Ḥachamim, so let us be those Ḥachamim who are holding on to the glory of who we are, but making sure that we don't mummify it and fossilize it in a way that it dies with a tombstone of a beautiful Magen David. And on that note, I want to say a thank you to Ḥacham Baruch Sabag for bringing this to us with the humility and yet the flame of a Ḥacham. And his neshama should have an aliyah as well as his son from the Minchat Moshe. And Bezrat Hashem, I'm looking forward to continue studying, continue learning more from the words of our Ḥachamim. Until then, I want to wish you a good night. And thank you so much for being here to learn together.